in the indigenous language. The translation thing, but Chicago sounds beautiful. I love the acknowledgement of native land. I would love to know where everybody else is dialing in from, right? Let me know in the chat, East Coast, West Coast. I want time of day, right? I'm trying to get the time zone check, just an energy check for the room while I get my screen pulled up. Okay, California, love that. Amazing. Okay, we're all Cali folks. I love it. Sweet. Very good. I'm really excited to talk to you all today. You've had incredible programming. Britt has been keeping me in tune with your Black History Month efforts. I agree, in the words of Whitney Houston, we need a longer month, we need a full year. These cultural months are starting to blend together as our worlds do. So I'm really glad to be talking to you today, just particularly about belonging. And while I am a Black women strategist, and you will hear me say time and time again that Black women make the best strategists, I think all of these insights to belonging are things that everybody can leverage and learn from. The whole point here with this conversation is for you all to walk away with a better understanding of what does it really look like for me to truly belong in a space, right? How have I struggled with belonging in the past? And how can I work towards building that in community, whether you're at work, whether you're at home? These are really universal insights. My hope is that you will be able to take something away from that. So let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about it, right? You're going to learn a bit about me. I'm going to tell you a little about the role of the strategist. I think it's important for us to ground that in the conversation, especially because that's core to who I am. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work beyond the work. I think we can all relate to that section. And then we're going to talk about the differences of belonging and assimilation, mainly getting into barriers, like why are people struggling to belong today? And then some reflection. So this is where y'all come in, right? I know we're a small group here, but that's even better actually, because I want us to be able to actually engage in some conversation. One thing I'm going to ask y'all to do is have a point of reflection. So I'll have some very simple prompts. They're questions that are almost so simply written, it's kind of hard to come up with an answer, but that's the point. You need to kind of just go with the first mind with them. So that's okay. You can drop them in the chat, or we'll talk them out loud, either way. And then just a conclusion. And then the last thing, and you can prep for this now, I'm going to ask everybody to end this conversation with a bit of gratitude. So really expressing gratitude to the people that you work with every day. I want that to be an active practice and something we leave the room with today here. Sound good? And of course, if you're excited by something, I grew up in the church, honey. So I respond to vocalization. I love the chat. I love the comments. I'm a multitasker. So feel free to just chime in whenever you want. When something moves you, let me know. Okay, cool. So a bit about me. From a personal standpoint, I always love to start with my parents because I'm very grateful to them. My mother is what I like to call a corporate queen. Her name is Wendy Williams, no relation, but she is someone who has spent 20 years, over 20 years in the tech space, starting from IBM to Lexmark to Hewlett Packard to these really big tech companies. And growing up, it was really beautiful to see her take up space as a Black woman. Typically one of the only in the corporations at the time, but that's where I get a lot of my professional foundation from. I like to say my mom is my mentor, so I always bring her up. And then my dad, he's the creative spirit, right? So he's a creative, he's an entrepreneur. He started out in acting and comedy, parlayed that to a really great career in real estate where he's able to connect and engage with community. And now he's writing a short film on John Baptiste du Sable. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. So yeah, he's all over, but nothing stops him in terms of creative writing and discipline. So really grateful for him. In terms of a career, I've kind of built an amalgamation of this cultural strategy career. It's a really interesting title. A lot of people are like, what does that even mean? Oftentimes. So I'll talk a little bit about what cultural strategy means to me, but I've built my career over the course of 8 years across a ton of different agencies, from Ogilvy to Leo Burnett, Havas, and now a cultural agency called Kashmir. And now I'm actually the co-founder of an organization called the New Vanguard, which is a creative coalition here in Chicago looking to center, uplift, and support creatives of color, which is really beautiful. So that's my passion. And then from an educational standpoint, I figured since I was talking to you all here, I would give you a bit of my educational background because I think that that's unique in and of itself. I started my education in an intercultural Montessori school. It was an immersion school. So from the hours of 8 to 3, I was in a Montessori classroom learning Japanese, all of my studies. And then from the hours of 3 to 6, I was studying English, and it was convenient because my mother needed after school care. So it was actually a school structure that worked for her. And no, nobody speaks Japanese in my family. I think I was just distracted by the large Spanish classroom size. And so they moved me over to Japanese when I was about 2.5. And then that stuck, which I think is more indicative of who I am as a person than anything else. So yeah, I can speak Japanese, which is a big part of my life. And then I went to public school. I bring that up because it was a huge transition going from a Montessori classroom where I was taking off my shoes every day, Japanese style, putting on slippers, walking around the class, convening with my counterparts in the class. Like Montessori education is very much about go to your counterpart before you go to the teacher, right? So we all have one lesson we're following, but we're all on different tracks. All of the grades are mixed up. And so it's a little bit different in that case. I do think it's worthwhile for us to kind of talk about the difference in education and how that kind of plays. Oh, Britt, I just saw your notice in the chat. Hold on, let me stop screen sharing just so I can fix it. Is that better? Hold on 1 second. Let me reshare. Thanks for the notice. Okay, let's see. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. See if this is a little bit better. Enter full screen mode. Got me? Give me a thumbs up.
It's still, we can still see the presenter window. It's not that big a deal. I just wanted to share.
Yeah, maybe it's sharing the wrong one. New share. That's the one.
There you go.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, cool. So yeah, so education, I think it's really important. So Montessori was really different for me. I was kind of trained to kind of go to my counterparts, find answers from my peers, talk to everyone in the classroom to kind of get answers, right? And then when I went to public school, it's like such a jarring memory. I was like sitting in a desk, staring straight ahead for like 12 hours. And then from then on out, like all of my report cards were, she talks a lot, but she's great in class. And I was kind of disciplined in a way in public school that kind of was very jarring for me because I felt like my environment in Montessori trained me to be collaborative, trained me to be conversational. But my public school education kind of shifted that for me. Lo and behold, I ended up going to a liberal arts college. Berkeley was on my list as well, but I needed an environment that was going to open me back up again, an educational environment where I wasn't limited, an educational environment that broadened my aperture again. And so I was really happy to find Columbia in Chicago. My mom, when I toured the school, we saw people writing on the walls, and she was like, yeah, if you want to graduate, you should probably go here, right? Like a space that will be a welcoming environment. So that's a bit about me. My career, though, has been built on an amalgamation of things, like I said, right? So I studied marketing, studied public relations. I got into diversity, equity, and inclusion programming, and I also got into advertising and brand strategy. And I like to say my cultural strategy career is a confluence of all of these things because cultural strategy differs than traditional strategy. Usually strategists, have a few different core roles that they have to do, right? They have to question everything. Their job is to be the nosy one, the curious one, the one that finds the answers, the ones that's not afraid to Google it in the middle of a party, the one that is down to go deep and look into culture, right? The other thing that they're interested in is also simplifying the complex, right? So strategy, you're looking out all over into the world to find different answers, and then you have to distill that. And the last piece is inspiring action. So that distillation is really going to be important because how you share what you've learned with others is how they're going to mobilize, right? So that's the whole part of strategy, is really kind of going out there, going broad, thinking as big as possible, going deep into culture to find some answers, and then honestly distilling it, simplifying it into an action point, whether that's for creative campaigns, whether that's for internal organizational change. There's so many applications of a strategist. Cultural strategy, my role is a bit different because strategy can be digital, it can be brand, it can be so many things in the world of advertising. But when I talk about cultural strategy, I'm talking about understanding people first and foremost, and their surrounding cultures, right? What are they connected to? The spaces that they engage in, the communities that they take part in, what sort of creative activities are they engaged in, right? What lights them up? The culture of this individual is just as important as understanding their personhood. Those two are intrinsically linked for cultural strategy, right? So if you're ever wondering someone's background, where they came from, their origin story, cultural strategy digs deep into all of that. The one thing that all strategists are taught to do is to be the consumer in the room, right? Especially in a marketing context. You know, brand wants to sell iPhones, whatever the case may be. You as a strategist have to say, okay, well, why would iPhones matter to anyone? Right? Why would this matter to anyone? Why would they care about it? Why would they want to engage with it, et cetera? Your job is to kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes and think through that issue. Think about it from all different facets, from their personal belief to the people that might influence their thinking, to the spaces that might inspire them, et cetera. All of that goes into play. I've said this before, and I said it at the beginning of our talk, right? I talked about this recently at the Sweathead Do Together conference. And if you're interested in learning more about strategy, Mark Pullard is a really great free resource. And he invited me on to speak after I said this on his podcast. But it's important as a strategist, if you're going to be the consumer in the room, you have to understand your identity, right? You have to understand and be able to look within yourself and then be able to look within someone else, right? And I think Black women make great strategists simply because they're able to have this intersectional identity, right? I'm sure Britt has talked about intersectionality with you all, but Kimberly Crenshaw coined this term, and intersectionality is important because it talks about the different tension points of oppression that people may exist, whether that's race and gender, class, LGBTQIA, right? All of those different intersections are important to an individual. Now, in the context of advertising and strategy, we don't think about oppression per se, but we do think about those intersections and how that might shift someone's thinking, shift how they show up in the room, shift how they might respond to someone, right? Those are all things that we all consider. And it's important to acknowledge how Black women in this art of strategy are really astutely capable of that, because of course you're moving through the world at two identity intersections all the time. Your head is on a swivel, right? And that goes for anybody in this room. You all have intersections of your own identity that show up in different ways. You might be a parent. You might be someone who grew up in a lower economic status. You might be someone who identifies as queer. You might be someone of a different race, right? All of those things intersect when you show up at work, right? Because your identity at work may not be fully that, right? So understanding the intersections of your identity are important because it allows you to kind of connect and better understand those in others. And I will say, it comes with some pros and it comes with some cons. Being a Black woman strategist is very empowering because you're able to think, your head is on a swivel constantly. You're moving through the world, thinking about yourself, thinking about others. And sometimes people rely on you to do that thinking. So one story I have to share with you is, this is exactly what someone said to me in a meeting room once. We were reviewing some creative work and it was supposed to be dedicated to a multicultural audience. And I was the only multicultural person in the room, let alone Black person, right? Black woman. And so mid creative review, one of the leaders at the agency said, well, you know what? We're all giving our opinions here. Since we have one of them in the room, let's ask. And then they all turn to me and go, Pilar, what are your thoughts on the work? And I'm like, I mean, I liked what y'all were saying. I liked your perspective. I liked, the responsibility shifted so heavily to me that it was so jarring in the moment. While it is my responsibility as a strategist to know people, know the consumer, know this audience, that responsibility doesn't lie on my shoulders alone. And so what I think is important in people respecting and understanding their own intersections is, this is a universal skill. This is a skill about personhood. This is a skill about seeing and understanding and acknowledging where people come from and what they're going through every day. right? And as a strategist, it's a privilege to be able to practice that thought every day. But it can be a burden when some people choose to kind of lay that on me because I'm the strategist and because I'm a woman of color, right? So yeah, one of them in the room, that was a first for me. And this was before, the they thems were really cute and out and about. This was a condescending, really derogatory them. I did not like them. I didn't like that. And I didn't check him in the moment. I didn't say anything because I was like, well, I am one of them, I guess. I just owned that part of my identity in a way that felt hyper visible. And hypervisibility isn't a bad thing when you're prepared to speak up and speak out, but you have to find your voice in order to stand up in those moments, right? Because the reality is, in my industry, this is the most diverse we've ever been. So this was someone who was progressive in saying that. This was someone that was like, yes, we're a diverse agency. We have one of them in the room. It was a compliment the way they intended it, right? When we look at this, and this is a really, really mundane chart, but it basically says, over the past about 4 years or so, we've increased diversity by like 1 to 2% across every single race and ethnicity, pretty much, right? And it's really sad because while Black and Brown people, I believe truly, and this is why I founded my company, The New Vanguard, we are responsible for the dominant popular cultural narrative that everybody engages with. I mean, we all saw Rihanna at the Super Bowl. It's everywhere. It's inescapable. And yet, the people that are responsible for creating campaigns and brand work that sits in that mix do not reflect the people that are creating that work for the culture and the people that are consuming it, right? It's half of the American population of Black and Brown folks when you look at these stats, right? So it's disproportionate. So that burden is kind of inescapable in so many ways.
People don't think the stories of Black women are very sexy and interesting.
Do they not think that, or do they not get it, or both?
Combination of both.
Okay.
And I think, as Black and Brown people in this country and across the world, I think we end up having to spend a lot of emotional cash trying to explain our worth.
Always.
And you spend so much energy trying to explain why this is good, why this is important, why this is the thing. We don't always get enough time to get to the making of the thing. And you get home and you're tired because you've had to prove that you're worth something. And so it was actually really wonderful when we got to Oprah. We didn't even have to finish the pitch. She was like, yeah, I have a hair tail. Let's do this. Why are we not doing that?
So that is my queen, Tracee Ellis Ross. I love her perspective on what it means to actually be sort of a person of color in corporate spaces, right? So you have this emotional cash, right? Every day you wake up, hopefully your wallets are full, right? But every day you go through things that cause you to spend your emotional cash. So you spend so much time explaining, yeah, you should believe in me, you should trust me, you should know what I'm saying, you should take it for face value because I have the experience, I have the backing, right? And you spend so much time convincing people about the work that the work never gets done because that's how you end up with like 10 meetings in your 8-hour day, right? It's really important because all of the work that we do is really important. It may seem really large, it may seem like this big task, but it's really, when you look at it more often than not, the work around the work that takes so much of your emotional cash. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge what the work around the work looks like, right? Because the reason a lot of people struggle with belonging in spaces is because they're tired, right? They're SOL. It's the end of my day. I spent all of my emotional cash. I don't have time to open up. I don't have time for small talk. I don't have time to ask you about your weekend. I just want to get right to it, right? And all of those things that you spend working around the work, right? All of that emotional cash is spent in the wrong places. When really, your emotional cash, you could be running that up, getting to know people, doing all of these other things, but the work in and of itself requires so much work around it that it's really, really hard to invest in belonging, to invest in anything else. And so I bring this up to say this analogy for me is really, really important because it stops really great, capable people from fully completing their jobs, their task at hand, and also fully feeling seen, respected, connected, and comfortable in the spaces that they're in, right? And one big thing for me, especially in my career, was assimilation. One of the big pieces of work around the work for me was assimilating, especially when I started my career earlier on, right? I was young, I was scrappy, I came through all of these amazing DEI programs. I could talk my shit at a young age. That's always been the case, right? So when I went into these spaces, people wanted me very much, especially at an internship level, especially as a junior, to shrink myself to fit into the space, right? To not talk, right? There was a brand that I worked on that I couldn't even speak in a meeting. I had to like write it on a notepad and then like slide it over and hope that my boss read it and then hope that she would talk to me about it afterwards. Very, very much quieting of my voice. And the issue that I had with that wasn't that, of course you can't take up space in a meeting when you're trying to get stuff done, right? Totally respect that. But the ways they did accept my voice in other cases were not the same, right? So when I was outspoken about the work or about opportunities or challenging and pushing the work, that was not accepted. But when I, chimed in about The Bachelor over the weekend, wine and cheese nights or whatever it may be, it was totally well received. Pilar, you're so funny, you're so great. I don't watch The Bachelor and I don't like cheese, but I would try so hard to actually, assimilate into their culture so that they could recognize my voice, understand my voice. And the issue with assimilation is that, yes, it is a beautiful survival tactic, right? Assimilation can look like code switching. It can look like protecting parts of yourself at work. But assimilation also is a really, really small lie. Every time. I don't like cheese, but I'm just going to have this little plate and talk about how great it is because I want somebody else to feel appreciated that they ordered it and then I like it, right? So I'm just going to eat it, right? I'm gonna act like I know the show or I'm interested in the show because you're passionate about it and I want to affirm your passions, your values, right? But you do yourself a disservice when you're not opening yourself up to get that back, right? So assimilation can look like a ton of different things. Sometimes it looks like straightening your hair. Sometimes it looks like covering your accent. I have a friend from Spanish Harlem. She literally took classes to cover up her accent. She was so ashamed of her history and her origin story. It took a lot of guilt to kind of speak comfortably, right? There are different ways we hide ourselves. And it's important to know that assimilation, yes, totally a survival tactic. But there are other ways that you assimilate that you might not have to do. I would love for you all to reflect on that. Are there little things you do? Have you ever laughed at somebody's really uncomfortable joke where you're just like, you shouldn't have said that? Or have you kind of told a little white lie about what you did over the weekend because everybody is talking about what they did over the weekend, even though you just chilled on your couch, but you felt like you needed to chime in, right? Those little opportunities where we choose to assimilate versus show up fully are again, one of those ways our emotional cash just goes right out the door, right? So I want you all to pause in your next moment when you have that small, brief window of interaction. Say, hey, okay, I want to respond to this person, but how do I respond? Am I responding in a way that would assimilate, make them feel comfortable, make everybody else feel comfortable? Or am I going to add a little something different, add a little spice to the conversation, add something different for myself, right? And know that I said something that was honest and that was true for me, despite how it may be perceived. Even though I know how I'm coming up into the space is respectful, it's not negative. It would be positive, right? So I want you all to reflect on that and challenge yourself, because the question really becomes is it easier for you to assimilate, right? Rather than opening yourself up? Sometimes I say yes, absolutely. I don't have the time to talk to you today. Yep, that was a great show. Let's move on, right? Totally makes sense. But again, how often are you offering yourself that experience versus actually integrating yourself into the environment? So I want to pause for a second. We tracking. Do we feel like we have a story or experience of assimilation? Are there little things you did, grew up from, grew out of? This is a tactic that people do as children, right? Because they're just mirroring what they see around them. This is something that happens all the time. But assimilation is not as deep of an act as people think. It happens all the time, very casually. You're like, why did I say that? I don't actually feel that way. Why did I do that? It happens all the time. I see some reactions in the chat about running out of emotion at 8:30 in the morning. Absolutely, please. Especially when somebody wakes me up in the morning. I appreciate that chat. Yeah, I agree. That's hilarious. Not you having to like Journey the whole time. Then they show up with concert tickets. Now what? Now you got to go to the show? Yeah, exactly. There are little things that you do, and it's just like, I let my landlord call me by the wrong name for a whole year. A whole year. Because I was just like, it's too far gone, right? Yeah, it's a serious thing. So yeah, it is. Michelle, you're totally right. Assimilation is a form of self-preservation because sometimes I don't want to spend the cash. Actually, sometimes assimilating is saving your cash. Absolutely. Totally. Absolutely. It goes both ways, right? Sometimes it's easier. Sometimes you don't want to have to deal with it, right? And it's just like, whatever. I'm not going to touch on that right now. It's like the person at Thanksgiving that always has that thing to say. And then you're like, I'm just going to let that go and get a second plate, right? Sometimes it's easier. Totally. Agree with that 1,000%. So let's talk about belonging. One of the things I think belonging requires is comfort and connection. You cannot feel a sense of belonging if you are not comfortable with your sense of self, if you are not comfortable with the people around you, if you are not connected to yourself and your needs and your wants, and if you're not connecting with other people around you too. Belonging is this active practice. And you have to understand the elements of comfort and connection that bring you there, right? I love that point, Bobby, about resonating with the disability side of things. Yes. Oh, God, hiding your deaf identity. Yes, absolutely. Shout out to the interpreter. Yeah, I think it's important for us to be kind of, Oh, Colette, that's an interesting point. Expand on that if you could a little bit. It's hard to know when it's actually being soul killing, as in like you don't notice over time when you're doing things and it.
Should I talk?
Yes,
Yeah, I
please.
don't have to chat. This was particularly a term that we used to use in terms of coming out, and you could literally be killing your soul because you were not being authentic. Now, and yes, often it was under duress of physical violence, but there was always a element of you're killing off your own soul, who you are at the core, because you're trying trying to assimilate and trying to be
Totally. You're
safe.
hiding those parts of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, but also, but sometimes it would go overboard. You couldn't tell. Like, am I really just trying to be safe still, or am I just continuing to kill myself because I'm too scared to take a step into trying, right? Who am I actually around? Assessing who are these people I'm really with? Are they? Is it safe enough? Kind of thing. But
yes, so well said. Child, you get into my last therapy session. That is exactly what we were talking about. It truly was genuinely this idea of, am I doing something to keep me safe, which is super valid, or is my safety getting in the way of it, or is it anticipatory safety, right? So this idea of like, hey, if I go out and actually do that thing, Will I feel unsafe when I'm there? Will I feel unsafe actually going out to do it? Or is this the anxiety I have around a lack of safety inhibiting how I show up in the world, right? And the anxiety around the lack of safety is 1000% valid. You need that. It keeps you alive. Absolutely. But there becomes a moment, right, where your safety might be slowing you down from showing up fully, your sense of safety. And so it requires a lot. I really love that point, because it's a good segue into some prompts. And these are things we could talk out loud. These are things you can journal about. I always say it's a journal moment later. I'll send this deck. You can write in the slides if you want. But there are a few questions I want you to ask yourself, right? Because when we're talking about safety, right? Safety is, I feel comfortable. Safety is, I feel warm. I feel protected. It may be something that safety is with particular people, particular environments, right? But all of that gives you a sense of comfort, right? And when you don't have that sense of comfort, your whole body's like, hold up, I don't know if I got it in me, chief. I don't know if I got it, right? So I want you to ask yourself, in terms of comfort, right? There's two questions. I feel most comfortable at work when, right? So list the different things that happen throughout your workday. Could be very small. They could have changed out the Nespresso pods and gotten the black ones that are really good, They could have done something. There might be somebody that opens the door for you every day. It could be the smallest things that make you feel comfortable, but they add up. So I want you to reflect on the different things that make your working experience feel good. You're like, actually, I don't mind going to this meeting with this person. This is a good one, right? You're not going to have an ace of a day every day, but those little glimpses of comfort are really important, because it's an affirmation for your sense of self. It's an affirmation for what you're showing up to every day. It gives you that sense of belonging, right? So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is about what you do for other folks, right? So I support others in feeling comfortable by doing what, right? What are the little things that you do for someone else? Not because you like it. This could be an assimilation thing. It could be, the way you like to start conversations with people. It could be, the check-ins. It could be so many different things. But I want to reflect. I'll give us like about 3 minutes-ish, 2 to 3 minutes to just kind of reflect and write. And I want to see if you all have in the chat, if you want to share, if somebody wants to share something. I want folks to feel comfortable doing that. So I'll give us 2 minutes. I'm going to put on a little tune.
I saw things I imagined. I saw things I imagined. I saw things I imagined. Things I imagined. Things I imagined. Things I imagined. Saw things I imagined. I 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 saw things I imagined. Things I imagined. Things I imagined. Things I
All right. I love all the responses in the chat. How are we feeling about sharing? Does somebody want to talk out loud about what they shared? Or if you want me to volunteer to read one, I will volunteer to read if you don't want to talk out loud. Feel free to chime in anytime. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the space you've been creating and the passion you're reinciting in me. I really appreciate it. I shared that I feel most comfortable at work when my ideas are truly listened to, rather than immediately brushed off when they don't align with the majority mindset. That has felt particularly important for me as a long-term employee at Berkeley, ever since coming into the IT world about 5 years ago. The pace at which IT work seems to go is just like lickety split every day, every minute, every second. And while I know there's a lot of good thought that goes into, the work that we do, I've often felt that folks who don't either have the acumen to or choose not to jump in and cut off the flow of conversation to say, well, let me jam my idea into this. And I'm one of those people who electively chooses not to do that because I don't co-sign with that. That we often get left in the dust, or when we say, well, let me bring up this other point of view, the response can be, oh, well, we've already basically convinced ourselves that we like what we're doing, so we'll feed some lip service to what you've said, but not really listen to it. And so the speed, I think, really can sometimes block our ability to really hear, listen, and consider. I don't think it's conscious. I don't think it's has an intent of evil, but I think it's a culture we sometimes find ourselves sucked into, both in technology and at Berkeley in particular, where that rapid fire culture doesn't always allow us to make sure everybody's voice gets to the table and is really thought about. And that's my opinion, and my opinion only, and I own it. Thank you.
I know that's right. You better own it. I love that. How many people, I want to hear some thumbs up in the chat. Anybody else snaps, empathize with that? Right? Okay. I want to follow up. I want to know, has there ever been a moment where somebody's caught themselves in that act? Or if you practice it, how do you catch yourself in the moment from doing that to others? That's the big question for me, because I feel like, active listening is so hard. And I empathize with people because they get excited. They're like, oh my gosh, energy is contagious. I love what you just said. And I'm going to acknowledge that by saying something completely different because I'm obsessed with the idea that it gave me. And I love that about you and me. I love that for you and me. But then that leaves the person who gave you all that energy feeling like, oh, okay, I brought the bottle of wine to share. I didn't think you were just going to have it all to yourself, right? Right. I love that example. I think it's a really great one because everybody can, and we all do it. We all do it. Right. Anybody else have another one to share? We have that time for like more. Okay. We can keep pushing. We're almost done.
Looks like Colette has her hand up.
Oh yeah, go for it, Colette.
Sorry, at the risk of taking up too much space. But yeah, it's really interesting. I do that thing where sometimes I will start to shut someone down because I think we've got the answer. I have the answer. We already blah, blah, blah. That doesn't make sense. And I literally in my head have to, it'll like go off, like, don't do that, Colette, right? But I'll be in the middle of it and have to reverse. And then I literally just kind of have to say, wait. Yes, let's hear what you're saying. And let's add that to the mix and see what we think. But it's really when I grapple and feel it, that's that moment where I go, oh man, why am I don't do that. But just trying more and more and more and more to be aware of it and sooner. That's sort of what my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of it is valid. It's an awareness thing, right? Back to the first thing we were talking about, understanding your sense of self, understanding your intersections, understanding your habits, understanding how you show up and your experiences. All of that adds to it, right? Let's talk about connection. Okay, so we've got about a minute to do this, and that leaves us with like 10 minutes at the end. So connection is really important. This is the latter half of this exercise, right? I hope you find these prompts helpful. I hope you can go back to them. I hope that in a moment where you're feeling like, I feel like I'm outer body right now. I don't even feel present at work. I hope this is a grounding exercise for you to find some sense of connection. One of the questions is, I try to connect with others by, right? So figure out different ways that you proactively try to make other people feel seen and acknowledged at work. And then the last question is, I feel most connected to others when, right? So what are the moments where people show up for you? I loved this point, Allison. I'm just going to shout it out. As a manager, she says in the chat, I support my staff by trusting them in their ability to get work done, offering flexibility in managing their time for appointments, childcare pickups, life events. Hello. If that's not a deeper connection beyond the work, I don't know what is, right? When we connect with others, we're able to understand one another more deeply, but it also allows us to give each other grace in moments, right? Connection is easy when you're kikiing and you're having a good time and you're chatting about the thing you both love. Connection is hard to retain in the tough times, right? And so it requires an understanding of what does connection truly look like for you. So I'll leave you with this as a journal moment later. I hope you all can find a little bit of connection and comfort from the exercise. That's pretty much our show for the day, right? I think all of these points for you all are universal, right? I want you to walk away from this knowing that you should seek to understand, right? Take that one. If I could teach you anything about strategy, it is, I find immense privilege to spend my day learning about people and being nosy and trying to understand them and trying to connect with them and trying to figure out what makes them tick, what makes them smile, what makes them everything, right? In order to do that, you have to question your world. You have to listen, you have to learn, you have to understand. Seeking to understand means I'm not looking for my answer, right? I'm seeking to understand someone else in this process. And in that, you'll understand your own biases. You'll understand, oh, not every representation that you see out there in the world is a mirror. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not like that at all. I don't look like that at all. I don't move like that at all, right? So seeking to understand helps you do that. Sharing your spark with others. So I want you to do the journal moment, right? And then identify your light. Understand that like your voice, is your value, right? And I always like to say, especially as a strategist, I've seen it time and time again. There are so many stories that have yet to be written, right? There's so many people, like we talked about earlier, people with disabilities that are walking about their day that you would never know, right? You do not know somebody else's story, and they probably haven't had the chance to say it and write it. So again, the moments you share your spark and cite that in other people, that energy is contagious. And they may take it and run with it and bring up a different point that has nothing to do with what you had to do with, but at least you can see the transfer of energy. But I think it's important for people to know what that spark looks like in you. It's a great example to bring into the space. And the last piece is, the comfort and connection piece. I want you all to practice those exercises a little bit more deeply. Use them as a contemplative point. If you had a tough day at work and you need to reset your connection with the environment, if you had a tough conversation with your manager and you need to reset that relationship, all of those things are super, super valid. So it's an active practice. You just have to be ready to put in the work. Okay. Awesome. So I want everybody in the chat to express some gratitude to someone they work with, someone that showed up for them, somebody that brought them the free cookies that were out in the cafeteria and you managed to grab them and then you thought of them and you just left it on their desk maybe, or sent me the DoorDash card because I was working really late, or somebody in your space. This is so important. We do this every day, or every all agency meeting. Last 10 minutes are dedicated to it, but it allows It allows you to shine a light on other people, and it allows you to open up in a deeper way. So with that, if there are any questions, Britt, I know we have a little bit of time to do that.
Yes. Well, first, I don't even know how old you are, but I want to be you when I grow up, girl. You're out here, just saying all the things that, the emotional, I just like have Post-its everywhere. And so thank you, so much for being here. And for those of you that don't know, I actually heard about Pilar from someone else who had heard her in a podcast, and they called me immediately and were like, you have to talk to this person. And then as soon as we spoke, I was like, you have to talk to everyone at Berkeley IT. So, I'm just so, thankful that you're here and talking about just like choosing joy and, knowing who you are and being like unapologetic about that. It carries, right? And so that's why you're here today. And so I'm just so thankful. So thank you. If you have questions, please, you can raise your hand or you can put them in the chat. We have a few minutes, and I want to give everyone that opportunity. So, and I see also gratitude in the chat, and that's
Love that.
awesome. That's a really nice practice. Do we have any questions at all? Anyone?
Or comments, if something sparked within
Comments.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're really resonating with something and you want to chew on it. Yeah, Michelle?
I just have to ask, because your story that you shared earlier about being in the meeting and being referred to as one of them, if you were in that situation again, would you handle it differently than you did in that moment?
Yes, that's such a good question. 1,000%. 1,000%. I think, so funny because I typically sometimes use humor to deflect when I'm hurt, right? And I'm so much better at a good clap back now. I would be like, one of who? And then like look around and be like, I have a thought though. I'll still give it to you. I think it's important for people. I don't think people realize the implications of their language, right? And so you may say something that might be sweet, endearing to you and a passive comment, but your intention is one thing. So I would totally say, yeah, one of who? But to be called one of them, man, one of us, my God. Yeah, it was crazy, it was insane. And the crazy part was that person was like somebody who I looked up to, who I was and maybe they were overly comfortable, which often is what happens too. Sometimes people get too overly comfortable, but I would have clapped back. I would have had a little sassy smart, like a little remark. So thank you for creating space for me to do that. Reclaim the energy.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, understanding connection and comforting and what people need for you to, show up for them is important. But at the same time, as folks in, currently marginalized spaces and communities, sometimes that like comforting, is rooted in discriminatory and white supremacist behavior, right? And so how do we differentiate between that sometimes, especially if you are maybe the only person of color in the room or, the only queer identifying person? Yeah.
You don't have to offer any of yourself to anyone. You don't owe that to anyone, right? I, for a very long time, existed in predominantly white spaces and corporate structures. So it was imperative for me to rely on myself for comfort. It was imperative for me to understand that they're not going to, my mom, I wish I had the quote. I keep a running quote book. She said, Pilar, you know who these people are. Why would you expect anything different from them? I said, Mom, but it just hurts my feelings. And she goes, and that's valid. She was like, but you know people, right? And you know yourself. And so it's disheartening, but the dissonance was so helpful because it doesn't give people a reason to disappoint you. right? Now, what I will say is you shouldn't deny yourself the opportunity to say something that you feel comfortable saying in a space, because people feel differently about your responses in the room. That's the other thing I will say. So just because you're living and you're existing in a white supremacist space that does automatically other you, it's so much harder to stand out even in those environments. But what I will say is you cannot, and just like Colette was talking about, you can't deny yourself the opportunity to take up space in a way that's comforting to you, right? And then because I'm petty, I say, well, their comfort be damned, because they don't care about mine. So I'm gonna get mine, you know?
Yes, thank you. Crystal Ball, please.
Yeah, Pilar, I have my own set of strategies, but I'm always looking for new ones.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you go to with folks who talk a whole lot of talk, but don't know how to put one foot in front of the other when it comes to actually doing something about all these values that they espouse around equity and inclusion?
It's a hard one without getting into the tea, so I'll spare myself.
I'm okay with it too.
Yeah, it's hard. It depends
Yeah.
on the ways in which they aren't showing up. Right? Are they one to like be preachy and then not follow up on what they preach? Or are they actively saying they're going to do something and then not doing it? Right? But what I will say is, I think it's important for people to have alliances and allegiances, right? I know tea time, exactly, Michelle. It's important for people to have alliances and other spaces, right? So my mom, and this is why I say my mom is my mentor. She could give the talk with me, I swear. 2 up, 2 down, 2 left, 2 right. She's always said this to me. You have to be comfortable with people in your organization that are 2 rows, 2 seats above you, 2 seats below you, and 2 seats to either side. So that when some person in your immediate circle continues to fail you, you are not out of pocket. You are not alone in that, right? It's important because you cannot commit to changing someone, right? You can't. You can't. That's a fool's errand, honey. And everybody wants to because they have the good in their hearts to do it. But there are people who are a boulder to change, right? And so it kind of stops you from living your own truth fully because you're like, yeah, this person's not rocking with me the same way. So that's why I say you can't isolate yourself within an organization. When you have those people 2 up, 2 down, 2 left, 2 right, your visibility is so much more deep, and it's so much more intrinsic to the work. And that person isn't a boulder, really. They're just a detour to the other person on the other side of them, right?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Love it, especially the 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. That's brilliant. And thank you to you and thank you to your mom.
Yeah, of course, no problem. I'll pass it along.
Thanks.
Thank you all. We're at time. I want to respect everyone's time. Pilar, thank you so much. Everyone else, thank you for being here. It means a lot. And yes, I hope that you have a good rest of the day. This will be recorded as well, and I will share it on the website so you can spread the love as well. All right. So thank you all again.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.